Um, Currently working on Acapella, which is my second startup, and we started Acapella in October 2020 to try to make asynchronous work more accessible. And so during the start of the pandemic, a lot of the workforce was pushed into remote, but definitely very experimental type of remote. And also at the start of the pandemic, everyone was very overwhelmed with Zoom fatigue, and we just realized that people are using old tools in a new way of working, and there just has to be a better way. And so that was also the inspiration for Acapella. How can you maximize the amount of deep work for your team while also not blocking people? And we definitely had the challenge ourselves at Acapella, where we try to enable as much deep work for our entire team as possible. But at the same time, especially if you're a manager, there will be a lot of moments where your input is needed, and your input might be blocking other people from continuing their work. And then there's just this kind of delicate balance needed to how much can you do deep work, and kind of what are the moments when it's actually justified to stop the deep work to unblock some other people. People typically bring up deep work because they say that, hey, this will make you more productive. And while that is true, I would say deep work is just as necessary to making people feel less anxious and just happier at work. So, kind of, I can cover definitely the productivity aspect, but I feel like people are rather aware of it. If you're working on one task and someone breaks you out of the task, it takes quite a while to basically get back to whatever you were doing. So it's typically called context switching. And, for example, the other part that is not so often talked about is just this general happiness level at work. And I noticed it with myself as well, especially going from an individual contributor to a manager. If I had a meeting coming up and I wanted to get some deep work done before that, be it whatever creative task, I often found myself feeling very anxious trying to get into the focused work, because I knew that the meeting would come up. I knew that I would need to cut my work short at the time, and it was just very hard to kind of focus in the first place. And I talked to my colleagues about the same effect, and I realized it's much more widespread that people just feel anxious doing creative work before any scheduled event. And I realized that was not only affecting productivity, but it was also affecting the overall well-being of people in the workplace. So that's also what made this topic, even more urgent for me to solve in our team. Deep work. People often think that only developers need time for deep work and for kind of long amounts of time of uninterrupted work. And I would actually argue against that. I would say it is not only developers or designers that benefit from doing deep work. It's also everyone else in the middle, be it an operational team, be it a product manager, be it someone working in customer support. And true, some roles are more interruption driven than others, but in general, very often when I was doing customer research while building our product, I realized that a lot of non-technical or just non-creative people, for example, when talking to a lot of product managers, they told me that the real time they get work done is after the workday, when they don't have any more meetings. And it was just a little bit sad to hear that people were forced to do overtime because during their normal work hours, just everyone expected them to be always available, no matter whether the request was urgent or non-urgent. Us at Acapella, we work almost fully asynchronously, and we only have one scheduled recurring event with the entire team, which is a weekly recap call, and that is always at noon on Friday. And I realized how destructive this one call per week is when my head of engineering told me that he's not planning to get any work done from like 10 a.m. to noon on Fridays, because he knows that that meeting will come up and he will just have to stop whatever he's doing. And so that was kind of like an interesting wake-up call for me, where like even if you have like 2 hours of deep work, some people feel like there's no point into trying to get into flow, because they know that this kind of event will be there to interrupt them, and they would rather, you know, do something super lightweight instead of like getting into a creative task in the first place. There's this very famous Paul Graham article about manager versus maker schedule, and then he kind of differentiates people into either working according to a managerial schedule, which means that people will try to be as responsive as possible, not really caring about getting into any type of deep work themselves. And then he talks about a maker schedule, which is then engineers and creatives again, who then can basically have their entire days free of any interruptions. And even though I very much like the essay, I think it misses the modern workforce a little bit, because I've definitely realized that in every function, people need and appreciate having the ability to do work regarding a maker schedule as well. So even people in operational or support or whatever other functions, like having time for deep work makes people appreciate their work a lot more. Like, you're gonna have incoming stuff from all the tools throughout the entire day. And then the question is, how do you know which one message is actually important and urgent, and, you know, out of the sea of everything else, right? And, you know, I would say people can most probably relate to just having like a barrage of Slack messages, you know, just getting pinged all the time. And then the question is, you know, like, if you have 10 unread conversations, how do you actually make sure that the one message in those conversations that is actually urgent, how do you react to that one, but at the same time being able to, with a peace of mind, ignore everything else and kind of deal with them later when you actually dedicate some time for that. So, and I also realized that this is kind of one of the biggest questions that every team that tries to maximize the amount of time that they work asynchronous has to deal with. Where it all starts, this is culture. And, you know, there is no point for, you know, for example, you know, I hate to name names, but like, for example, if you work at McKinsey, there is no point to try to, you know, maximize deep work, because the culture is extremely urgency orientated, and right. And that also means they're just optimizing for different things as a company. And and that's maybe the point where I see a lot of companies fail. I see a lot of individuals want to enable deep work for themselves and their teams. But if the leadership of the company does not have kind of deep work as a high priority for the company, then it is very hard to basically implement those changes within the entire organization. Like if the CEO, for example, treats everyone kind of in the manner that every message that I send is ASAP, it's very hard for other team members to not feel that they can also do that. A lot of engineering tools swear by having stand-ups, startup days. But I would say, having morning stand-ups kind of feels like you don't trust what your team is doing. And I think that's just not the right message to send out. And also forcing everyone to, come to work at 9 and starting their days with a call. It's just like creates so much anxiety for people. It's totally unnecessary, and it's definitely not serving its purpose. And we replaced, we never had stand-ups, but we implemented an async stand-up with a Slack bot that basically just sends a private message to each person once a day, and they need to write what they achieved on that day and what is their priority for the next day. And it still works just as a morning stand-up. It creates just accountability between the team members to make sure that they actually get stuff done, because it's not so great to write into your daily summary that you didn't do anything. And it also makes you think, hey, what is the one goal that I need to get done tomorrow? So this has definitely been a big productivity enabler for us. And it's still surprising how many teams still enforce stand-ups upon their team members. And I do not understand as managers, productivity also starts from just trusting each other to do everyone's best work, right? And forcing everyone to show up just to make sure that, that they actually start working at 9, that's not trusting your teammates. So it is the responsibility of the individual team or department leaders to set the tone in their respective departments and teams. So, if, for example, maybe a little bit stereotypical, but if the CEO feels like everybody needs to respond to my messages within 2 minutes, but the CTO feels I'm totally chill if you get back to me within the next 6 hours, then there will be one part of the organization that will be working however they want. And then the CTO should just be an example and try to instill this async culture into the entire technical organization. So I feel like exactly when there is no clear decision on the highest level, then just the person who feels like, hey, this is important, this will make my people happier and more productive, they should implement it in their departments then. So yeah, this is basically, this is the app. Here you have different folders for your notifications. You have a folder for each specific app, and you have an inbox which kind of collects everything that comes in. You have a saved inbox where you can basically add reminders if you don't want to deal with something immediately. And you have your important folder. And this is kind of what I mentioned when I said there needs to be a way how to separate signal from the noise. I have my important folder, and I have set up here what is important to me that comes in. So for me, what is important is having mentions in all channels. Having any message in the upgrade channel is basically the place where people upgrade their plans in a Capella, and also direct messages from a few select people in my team. And also I've added linear into this list and GitHub pull request into this list. So this is everything that lands in my important list. And I have turned on desktop notifications for my important list. So if anything lands here, I will receive a desktop notification. But otherwise, if anything lands in my inbox from any of the other tools that are outside of these filters, this I will not see. I will not receive a notification about, and I can trust that it has been collected, but I will not be bothered by it. I will deal with it once I go back. So, and yeah, here you can see kind of all the tools. And if I want to look into something, I can just open it and I can reply to the notification, or I can just mark it as done. And this will immediately push me to the next notification. If I don't want to deal with it, I can just say, hey, let's save it and let's deal with it later. And exactly, this is how you go through different tools inside Acapella. Yeah.
Super interesting. So
yeah.
and the save button and all those buttons on the top, that's part of the Acapella platform.
Yeah, exactly. So this is all these are part of the Acapella platform. This is the embedded application. Yeah. So this is how it works. But yeah, if anybody wants to sign up, you're free to download the app at acapella.com. And yeah, if you have any feature requests or bug reports, I will be the best person to ask. Yeah.